Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. As we head into the holiday weekend, there is a lot of big news to tell you about. The COVID pandemic, new reaction to reports the Russians paid Taliban fighters bounties to kill U.S. soldiers, new revelations about President Trump and his family, and more. Now, I usually don't talk about tomorrow's program so early in tonight's program, but what we chose to do for Independence Day is notable because we chose to show you how American leaders at moments of crisis or at moments to try and rally this nation together have not only led, but they've at times inspired and consoled when called for. I'm talking about men like Barack Obama, Ronald Reagan, Bobby Kennedy, the late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. I mention that now because clearly that is not what we are getting at this moment when we desperately need leadership. We are not getting a president who is meeting the moment. As we head into a holiday weekend that definitely doesn't feel celebratory, we are confronted by crises that seem to be coming at us from every direction. A pandemic that feels far more like a spreading wildfire than a controlled burn. An economy that, as bad as it already is, seems perilously close to taking an even more ominous turn. Racial upheaval tied to policing without any national direction. In a scandal that's almost too dark to believe if not for the principal players involved. The Russians paying bounties to the Taliban to kill American GIs. Our White House being made aware and not saying or doing a thing. So as we are about to celebrate the birth of our nation, let's imagine how the founders would assess the American Express experiment at this defining moment and how they would judge the 45th president when his country needed him most. Let's start off with the pandemic. Every number is staggering. States like Texas, California, Florida, Arizona, they're seeing such rapid spikes that they are days from capacity, if not already there. Health experts are using terms such as apocalyptic to describe the growing wave that is about to crash on states, most of which ignored pleas from health leaders to mandate mitigation. Just an hour ago, Texas Governor Greg Abbott finally acceded to the pleas of his mayors, and he ordered mask wearing in the Lone Star State. Doctors on the front lines wished that this came weeks ago after what they've encountered this past week.
I'm having to choose and have conversations about which patients I'm supposed to take care of, which patients I can't take care of because I got to take care of other patients.
I got 10 calls, all of whom young people who otherwise would be excellent candidates to be able to put on ECMO. They're so sick that if they don't get put on, they don't get that support, they're probably going to die. I had 3 beds. And just in making that decision, being able to figure out who really is going to benefit, it is a level of decision making that I don't think a lot of us are prepared for.
And it will get worse. States, of course, they've been on their own from the very beginning of this crisis. Forget having to grovel to the federal government for PPE and coordination. State leaders, they've had to try to marshal their citizens' vigilance and compliance while their own president preached irresponsibility and defiance while lying about the threat in front of us.
Looks like by April, in theory, when it gets a little warmer, it miraculously goes away. I hope that's true.
It's going to disappear. One day it's like a miracle. It will disappear.
It will go away. Just stay calm. It will go away.
It's going to go away. This is going to go away. And I think we're going to be very good with the coronavirus. I think that at some point that's going to sort of just disappear, I hope.
You still believe so? Disappear?
Well, I do. Yeah, sure.
He said that yesterday. To punctuate this unprecedented idiocy, our president has decided to take a break from the golf course, and he will head to Mount Rushmore tomorrow, where he will indulge in a campaign photo op masquerading as a celebration of America. He, of course, won't use the opportunity to rally this wounded country in a call for shared sacrifice. Instead, expect an indulgent pity party of perceived grievances, all done, of course, without a mask. I give you now an ally of his, it seems, the South Dakota governor.
In South Dakota, we've told people to focus on personal responsibility. Everyone one of them has the opportunity to make a decision that they're comfortable with. So we will be having celebrations of American independence. We will have a large event at July 3rd. We won't be social distancing. We're asking them to come, be ready to celebrate, to enjoy the freedoms and the liberties that we have in this country.
In thinking of Mount Rushmore, I can only imagine what those giants in American history carved in stone would think as they looked down on the imposter in front of them. I wonder what Abraham Lincoln would think as an overdue reckoning on race in this country takes place. Instead of reconciliation and equality and the search for a more perfect union, his legacy is appropriated by a man who the majority of this country in a recent poll believes is racist. In 2020, we have a racial agitator who is threatening to withhold funding for our national defense unless Confederate generals who fought to preserve slavery and destroy the United States are not preserved in perpetuity on government installations. And what of George Washington? Can you imagine our first foremost general being briefed of the British paying terrorists to kill his troops and him not investigating and him not condemning it? Can you imagine our first president seeking to reward that nation and those terrorists for murdering those who defended America's freedom? Of course you can't, because they, and no occupant in between or after, has held this nation in such so low regard. This weekend, let's remember what really makes America great and remind ourselves it is not the little man in the red hat who's only posing with American giants but has no business being in their company. Coming up next, a soldier who fought in Iraq. He'll join us, and he is livid at the way the president is handling the situation with the Russian bounties. I'm talking about Paul Rykov, who is now an advocate for fellow vets. He says the commander-in-chief is a threat to our national security. He'll explain why next.